So the man of footballs, the most attractive man on the spring football
100%.
circuit, 100%. One of the most viral videos on his channel has nothing to do with spring football. That seems to be the trend.
It's so weird.
Yeah. What got him monetized? That 4,000.
Right.
Yeah. It wasn't the amazing content he does about like the football leagues that no one knows about. It was the Kentucky River dance thing or whatever the hell he's got.
It's so funny. That video has like 80,000 views, and I only put it on YouTube years ago to share with my family, and I just I didn't put it on private or unlisted, and it just blew up. Yeah. Gives me those 4,000 watch hours though.
Well, it's that, and then you get the occasional like $6 YouTube day, right. And you're like, oh man, one of my videos popped, and it's like, nope, this couple thousand views on the Kentucky Dance River or whatever it was. But John, even before we get into this wild, there's two things I want to go off track with. As we dive into this black hole of quarterbacks for the State of the Union, and that's the tagline. So we're gonna get some political. We're going to get some political clicks right here. But when Jared Lorenzen was playing with the Kentucky River Monsters, did you ever go to any of those games, by the way?
No, I covered Jared Lorenzen when he was quarterback at University of Kentucky.
Okay.
And he was not quite that large, God rest his soul. He was, but he was a viral sensation. I did watch some of those games. Unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to go up to Northern Kentucky to see him, but no.
Yeah, I kind of circled this back on like two things. One, obviously, the big like trending thing on social media is Rico Knows talking ill of a dead person. A young man who may have not been a great guy, may have been a great guy. I actually talked with John Vogel about it. He said he actually like turned his life around, which neither here nor there. The young man is dead, and I'm like of the belief of when someone dies, like we cut it off. I think there's very few people out there who we can trash once they're dead. Personally, you got to have your own chapter in the textbook, in my opinion. That might be a controversial take, but I mean, I just feel like once someone passes away, like, I mean, what do you like? It's just you let it die, and that might be a controversial take. There's plenty of terrible historical figures out there that we trash continually, but I mean, I don't think that guy's on the level of like Pol Pot or Adolf Hitler. Like, what I mean? Like that, clip this and let me go viral for saying that. I don't think he's a terrible human being on that sense, but
no, I didn't really get to know him when I covered him in college. But I mean, there were issues there, no question.
Yeah.
But he, he really did try to turn it around later, his personal life and his health. And then, sadly it just didn't work.
And then the second thing I wanted to flex today was this football.
Sweet. You know where that would look good right back here, man.
Yeah, I've been petitioning for this football. The Vegas Nighthawks have been my thing since we've been here. My wife and I, we go to all the games and whatnot. And long story short, Evan Wilsmore obviously does a lot of work with that team. And I was like, yo, you got to give me a ball. You got to give me a ball. Like, I'm very big and not like grabbing one from a child.
Sure.
And, you know what I mean? Like if I got one in the stands, I'd probably give it away because I feel bad. And also I don't want to be that guy who's like,
you don't want to have the chapter in the textbook.
Yeah. I don't want to be on the same level as Pol Pot and, all these terrible dictators and whatnot. But I just need to flex that because I know you're the man of footballs. And I mean, it's a nice piece of furniture in the house. Like
that is really cool.
Yeah, it's footballs and helmets. That's really the only like physical items that I actually like want in my life is footballs and helmets. Like I don't really
helmets back here. It's hard to see, but I've got an XFL and a USFL that I had that was actually a custom made one.
Yeah.
An AAF, of course, got to have one.
You have to. If not, like, do you cover spring football? If you can't tell me about Reese Horn.
Right. Or Johnny Manziel's cup of coffee with the Memphis Express.
Oh my God, I was supposed to go to a Memphis Express game in 2019, and then Charlie Ebersol just ruined that for me.
You must have, were you going in what, week 8?
Yeah. I was getting back from a deployment or a contract, and I had tickets, and then it was like no bueno. And then, but it's all good because I love the AAF. It's actually how I got into this, and I talk to some AAF guys still who are doing half decent things with their life, and Kevin Anderson, former Arlington Renegade. I consider him a friend at this point. We talk probably way more than he wants to talk to me, but but yeah, and this is kind of how this, because when I originally started like going down this rabbit hole, the State of the Union for the spring league quarterbacks, and I got off the phone a week or two ago with a player who's not a quarterback, and I was like, what are you thinking? He's at the age of like 26, 27, and he's like, man, I'm not really sure if I'm coming back. And he's a good player. He's a solid player. He's got a roster spot on all 8 teams, whatever he wants to do, all this stuff. And I was kind of like thinking, I was like, what is year 3 looking, well, technically, year 4 looking into the spring football era of players? Are they aging out? Like we saw Trent Harris retired. TJ Barnes retired. I know he's an elder statesman, 33 or 34 years old, 32 maybe. Trent Harris, 27 years old, NFL experience, really good in 2023, 2024, not so good. I wonder how many walls are we hitting? And when we talk about spring football, I think there's 2 positions that get highlighted the most, as they should. And one is always quarterback play, and 2 is always offensive tackles.
Yep.
So I'm kind of just like, I don't want to say a rant session, but like I just needed to like talk to another human being about this who understands like what do we do with these quarterbacks who we have probably assumed are not going to the NFL, but provide such value to this league.
I think you hit on a good point, Pat, because you got to think that some of these, and we'll talk about them, but some of these guys who are 27, 28, 29 years old, and they're, that might have had a taste of the NFL, they might not enjoy the experience as much in the UFL, especially if they're not starters. And there are a few instances of that, in the UFL this year. And we'll talk about it, but you're right. When you start to, we're starting to wade into some waters that we have not waded in before. And we're talking about a 4th straight year of spring football. So you bring up a very good point in what's the wall for some of these guys, and especially the guys in the spotlight who they might have, do they want to continue to keep trying this? Because, I mean, let's be realistic. The reason that 99% of these players are in any league that's not the NFL is to get to the NFL. I mean, that's, there were some that I think, and I know Luis Perez is a guy who is, he's 31 and he continues to get a little taste of the NFL, but never quite makes it. And, you and I have talked before about how he feels like he might be a 4A player, but at 31, does he want to continue to keep doing this? So, yeah, I think that's a very good point. Like we're starting to get into year after year after year. Now, after year, what's the limit for some of these guys?
And you got a guy like Bob's, and I think it comes down to coaching staff too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Reggie Barlow needs to win games. Reggie Barlow needs to have success. Reggie Barlow could probably be a position coach, do that for 2 years, get to become a coordinator, and within 5 to 10 years is probably an NFL head coach. Like, I think, obviously, if he performs to the standard, right? Like, he can't have terrible defenses and whatnot. He needs to, continue to prove who he is. So you need to go to for Reggie Barlow, you can kind of care a bit more about convincing Te'amu to come back and keeping even a Jalen McClendon as your QB too.
Right.
Bob Stoops could literally throw anyone out there. He can go 9-1 or 1-9. And do you want to get rid of Bob Stoops on your coaching staff or on your, on the grand scheme of coaching staff? I don't think that matters as much. Yeah. And that's something I've been thinking a lot about too, and diving into that rabbit hole where, a lot of people, and I'm gonna kind of level with Emory Hunt on this because he's very critical of like, why is AJ McCarron in the league type stuff. And it's like, well, he's with the Battlehawks. Anthony Beck might want to be an NFL head coach. he should probably win games.
Right.
And how do you do that? You do
Big
that
games.
with an agent. Yeah, he's like 1-3 in big games, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, just like, and I'll pull up the, our presentation that we'll go through today.
Right.
But it's like you go through this list and this QB graveyard. Like, what are we thinking as far as moving with that?
Yeah, I mean, you're starting to see some opportunities for the guys going to the CFL. And even I was surprised, when you sent me the list of some of the quarterbacks we're talking to. First of all, there was some flashbacks there, but the IFL has really started to pick up some players, not even just quarterbacks, but a lot of players from other spring leagues. But yeah, I mean, this is it's interesting to see these names again and where they're trying to go. And like a guy like Kyle Van Treese, who was really killed it in the Sun Belt, and with Georgia Southern, he really kind of blew up there. And there are a lot of those quarterbacks where you see they go to another school, another team, and then they blow up. And to me, he's a guy who I think could totally play in the UFL.
Yeah, at least deserve an opportunity. And just going through these two lists, like, Logan Nelson, small school guy, I equated him to a weaker Carson Strong because of knee injuries. But when these guys pop up on the rookie minicamp radar, like you got to think like, hey, like, is this guy on the short list? Because you go through and Fred Payton's another guy who killed it at Mercer. Rocky Lombardi, when I made the original list, he decided to come when I did my first video last year. He decided to come back. He's a practice squad fringe 3. Like, I don't think he's a guy by any means, but you just go down these people, and then you see the guys they've drafted as well.
Right.
And it really isn't a crazy amount of, like, it's only it's only 8 guys.
Yeah.
Like, and Connor Blumerick, it was a Taysom Hill type quarterback. So I just don't understand like where we're moving towards on this pathway. And quarterback is the easiest position to critique and whatnot.
Right.
Because in my opinion, like, it's the highlighted one, and we don't really talk about the offensive tackles other when they're doing bad and whatnot. So it's just a crazy dynamic right now. And I'm glad we're talking about it. We'll go through more names, but that's really, I just think a lot of people don't realize the lack of true quarterback movement. And I've gone back to 2022. If we wanted to get real goofy, I can go to 2019. I mean, even incorporate the spring league of 2021 there. But I mean, it's really like you go through this list, Case Cook is the only one out of this one. What's Case's deal?
Yeah.
Like, what do you feel about moving forward from the Philadelphia Stars, their legacy of like Case Cook is obviously the guy here who this poor man gets abused constantly.
Yeah, it's like Case Cookus is a prime example of what we just talked about. Is he going to be a guy who wants to continue to do this? I mean, he's just recently married, married after last season. In fact, he lost his wedding ring on the field, I think, at one time, and the Mikes picked him up looking for his ring. But, the offensive line there, as you said, we don't really talk about them until they do something wrong. They're kind of like referees and officials. But Case Cook, he played from his back the entire season with Memphis. So is he a guy who would really I want to come back for more of this, unless there are some major changes? Now, I don't think, and I talked on a recent video with Reed Johnson of the Markcast where we kind of looked at all the coaching situations in the UFL and what this might look like in 2025. But, I don't think John DeFilippo, I think he should stay there in Memphis because I thought, he's a great ambassador for the league. But not only that, give him another opportunity to try to rebuild what he took over there. I mean, it looked like it was going to be kind of an all-star situation. Didn't turn out that way. Yeah. But you've got to think that, if there are some offensive line changes, a guy like Case Cookus, might come back.
Yeah, it's weird because I don't think you get this in the CFL maybe even the IFL, like to an extent, because the IFL, I think guys are still chasing that high a little bit, where essentially your roster has to, because there's only 8 starting QBs now, your roster has to recruit the quarterback, because Case is like, he's put out, probably 20 games of film.
Yeah.
He's got NFL, a little bit of NFL tape, like preseason, whatever. And it's like, and, playing practice squad. It's like, does Case need to do anything more to earn an NFL opportunity? I echo that with Teamu. I echo that with a couple of these guys and whatnot. So, I mean, I wanted to go through a lot of these quarterbacks, but like, what's the end game here for a guy like Case Cook? Is obviously to get to the NFL, but does he need the UFL anymore to play to play football in his career?
Yeah. I think you point out, you make a good point. I mean, how many more games does he need to put on tape? And does he need to continue to put on tape him just getting absolutely killed? Now, there are, granted, you can lay it all at the feet of the offensive line, but sometimes he holds on to the ball a little too long and gets himself in trouble and his line in trouble. But you're right. Like, at what point does Case Cook say, I don't need to play another season of this? What more can I do? In fact, it's almost like, kind of like a Reggie Barlow situation, in that I really thought if Reggie Barlow had made it to another, made the playoffs or made it to another championship or won a championship, he's probably going to get a lot more opportunities than maybe the results that we saw this past season. So sometimes you can actually work against yourself if you're, in a situation where you're not going to look your best, you're not going to do your best. And then NFL scouts are saying, they're smarter than we are, Pat. I mean, they know what they're looking for. But after a while, he's on his back. He's holding on to the ball too long. Those are things that I'm sure that he's been coached through. But do you really want to go through another season of the UFL to try to get that shot to the NFL? Or do you want to say, I'm just going to try to get into some of these camps and just go from there?
And a lot of these guys too, and it's funny, we go into New Jersey, is Kyle Lauletta is a guy who called it quits after last year.
Yeah.
I think he was released and they picked up Barrier or whatever it was. But Kyle Lauletta, you hit that wall and you're just like, I'm 27 years old.
Yeah.
I've made some money in the NFL, add to USFL paychecks, or paydays and whatnot. And you're just kind of like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And, it's just going through this graveyard of guys. And it's like, you look on the Pittsburgh Maulers list and it's like, did we really need to see Vadley? Did we really need to see James Morgan either? But the Maulers also gave us Josh Love and, a taste of Roland Rivers, who was with the Steelers for a little bit. So it's just, as we dive into this list, and I mean, the meat and the potato of this episode really comes down to, who do we think is coming back? Like, regardless of NFL opportunities, who do we think is hanging it up? And that's really what, just to kind of go through this nostalgia of all these guys who have like been here. And it's like, you go through the Breakers, you see MBT back up, Davis Cheek, he called it quits. I mean, Akil Glass, he's local to me in St. Louis. He's still training. Kyle Sloter, I think he's done. Zach Smith retired. He went to a hub camp. Shea Patterson up in the CFL. I mean, these are like, when you look at these lists, John, of like this QB graveyard, are there any guys that you're kind of like, man, I wish we saw more of, or, I wish that they, came back, or they didn't, you're like, man, this guy needs to be done type stuff?
Well, Davis Cheek was a guy he was kind of a mystery to me when I started to look at the quarterbacks. I think he got a taste of the NFL. I think, was it Carolina Panthers maybe, or somewhere?
Yeah.
And then, I that was, and a lot of people pointed out to me that they felt like he could have been, something in spring football. What we never did really, I don't know that we saw a lot of him, and I don't know what his situation was. But if there's one person, off that list, I also thought Kyle Sloter was going to blow up too. And it, I thought he was good. He just, it didn't, not star power there for him, and nothing against him. I thought he was really good. I just don't know if the situation was right. Yeah. And MBT, that, for him to play some spring football, to leave the CFL, and now I guess he's back with the CFL. But I really would have liked to have seen it. I understand why he went back to the CFL. I think that was, he felt more comfortable there. But I'm glad we did get a taste of him in spring football.
Well, I think American football fans would have should have appreciated MBT for who he was. And that's a guy from like 2011 to 2016, bounced around NFL rosters, back end rosters, was with Flip at one point, played in the original UFL in 2011, played arena ball, played in the spring league. I mean, I think he's at like 7 leagues and 13 teams. I forget the gentleman's name, the Argos guy who's writing a book about him. Like, those are chapters in the book that I don't think people are going to appreciate enough. And it's just continuing to look through the elephant graveyard. Believe it or not, Houston Gamblers really had the least transition of guys. You talk to members of the Houston Gamblers from 22 and 23, and they'll get on the high horse and tell you that Terry Wilson, I think he's a UK guy, right?
He is. Yeah, I covered him in college. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a guy that people said needed another opportunity and whatnot. And Montel Crozar came in, kind of messed their season up and whatnot. Just keep going through the list. Like were we excited about the Brett Hundley signing? In hindsight.
Remember that was a huge deal. Brett Hundley was going to come in, and let's see, was he with the Packers? I think at one time he was somewhere.
Packers, Cardinals, Colts, Seahawks. Yeah,
right. Yeah, and that was the big one. You and I who have followed spring football for a while, it's like we just every year it's like, is Luis Perez coming back? Is he coming back? Because he's like, his story's awesome, and I'm sure we'll talk about some Harlan Hill winners as well. But he's. His entire story, I just think, is like what spring football is about and to where he is, and would love to have, even seen him move on to the next level, but happy that he returns. And I hope he returns for another year.
Yeah. And I've made the joke about it that this is the Luis Perez Hall of Fame campaign channel as well. So,
hey, it's no joke, man. Yeah. I'm telling you, it's the Pro Football Fame.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you break down Luis Perez more than anything else, it's, in my opinion, like if he plays 3 more years, he's probably going to cross 10,000 yards. Right. He'll break Jim Kelly and Bobby Heber's records. So it's like, what are we doing? Like, I mean, it's crazy stuff. Going back into the past, look at this gnarly list. This is 2 seasons of football. A lot.
There's your guy, Brian Lewerke. I see him on the list there.
Yep.
Brandon Silvers, he was still hanging on there for with the kind of a 3rd string deal with St. Louis. I asked this to Reed Johnson as well. Were you surprised that Brandon Silvers didn't get more of an opportunity in the UFL?
I talked with Gradkowski throughout the season about it, and my personal opinion is I think that was a homie hookup. I don't like my 3rd string quarterback. I'm going to speak out both sides of my mouth on this. I don't like my 3rd string quarterbacks having a lot of experience in spring football.
Yeah.
And the reason why is I think it takes an opportunity from, John Smith from Western Kentucky University of Our Lady of Mother Teresa, or it takes an opportunity from, Rocky Lombardi maybe, or, a guy who we're not sure about, and we know who Brandon Silvers gets, like the Kevin Hogan signing doesn't bother me as much because it's a midseason pickup.
Right.
You need a guy
kind of an emergency, right?
Yeah. You need a guy who, if you've lost 2 QBs,
right. If
Kevin Hogan plays 1 game this year, he does pretty well. They win the game. Like, you're like, okay, that makes sense. Hogan's played in NFL games, but to have your 3rd string QB be Brandon Silvers, one, I think is a disservice to his talent level because I still think he can play at an acceptable level in this league. And
Agreed.
2, I would have rather them have Drew Plitt even as their 3rd string guy who could use the experience. For the Battlehawks specific situation, Manny Wilkins is older. I think Manny is a boomer bust guy. Like, he's a class of 2019 guy, so tells you his age. But we saw the boom and we saw the bust. So I personally think they win both those games if Brandon Silvers is playing, because he probably throws for 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, maybe rushes for 11 yards, with 7 of them coming on a 3rd and 5 where they're not accounting for him, where it's 3rd and 7, Manny Wilkins is there. You take away that first option on the Hakeem Butler drag or
Right.
sluggo.
Yep.
Wilkins is taken off, or
And
he can take, and he can do that.
And Hakeem Butler, he was killing people on those slant routes, and because he's a good target. But yeah, you're right with Manny Wilkins. You cannot deny how dynamic he is. But remember when they got put in that pressure situation, and he started throwing interceptions in the 4th quarter. It was you're as you said, boom or bust.
Yeah, and then continuing to go down the list, I'll defend this man till the day I die.
Your guy, Paxton Lynch.
My guy. Yeah, I got you got the Dormandy experiment, who might have won the game in 2020. Or excuse me, might have won the championship game. Once again, you go with the more consistent, even-keeled guy versus the boomer bust with Chase Garbers, who, might have thought which if I was Chase Garbers, I wouldn't have came back. I mean, I think you put together, you're a young guy.
Yep.
Yeah. Like I think you're a young guy. You've made plays. Chase Garbers is probably still in the NFL cycle, in my opinion, regardless of spring league or not. Like, you'll see his name pop up on the workouts and all that stuff. And then when you go and you put up 5 good games, like I had him as a top 2 quarterback the first 4 weeks before injury. Like, I think you lose stock, in my opinion, if you come back and play.
And, that slide, that 3rd down slide, people saying he was making a business decision. The NFL scouts don't want to see that. But I did think it was interesting that when he was out for the year, regular season, that he ended up coming back, because we were all like, there's no way that Chase Garbers is coming back. But he did.
Yeah.
And I don't know that he helped himself either.
No, I think he hurt himself. And as we transition into the teams that are still active, like this is now we're getting to the meat and potatoes of who's coming back, right?
Right.
The biggest news right now is the Houston Gamble Necks swapping out GMs. There's the contracts where the contracts don't, are expired. They are expired now. Was it June 30th or July 30th?
Yeah. It was June 30th, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have, a new GM here. Where I think Sinnett is safe because of this, in my opinion. I think Sinnett's safe. I think Nolan Henderson is safe. I think JG is on his last, figure it out type thing. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. With Nolan Henderson, he's interesting too. As he opted out of his senior year in college. He was great because I think he really thought, that's why you would opt out, is because you think you're going to get drafted in the NFL, and it didn't really happen. He went in as an undrafted free agent, and I still think that his future might be in the NFL. I think, but you're right, because I think he is safe if he wants to come back, and it's going to be really interesting to see with the GM shuffle down there, like what happens, with the whole, with everything, with Houston, coaching staff, players, everything. You see PJ Walker on that list. He's like the gold standard for spring football quarterbacks right now. I mean, he just signed with Seattle, I think, recently. So he's the gold standard. I think a lot of people are looking at. The dude can play, and he won some games for the Panthers. So but I think you're right. I think JG this is where he was injured too. I mean, give him a break on that, but this is a time. It's like this might be your last shot.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they probably bring in 4 QBs. With Sinnett putting up decent film, like I think Sinnett's QB IQ is obviously higher than anyone in Houston. I don't think Eric Price is a good offensive coordinator. I know some things in that room, and their game plans were very find Jay Hall, find Kurt Merritt, and Sinnett doesn't play that game. There were a ton. Like CJ Johnson made Terrell Buckley look like very competent, and I hate saying that about guys who know more football than I do, but I mean I'm not mic'd up, so you don't hear my dumb things I say, and like our coaching staff at a different level might say and whatnot. So I mean, I hope there is definitely some rift there between CJ and Sinnett, and I think with JG and Nolan Henderson being younger, they're going to be less like buck back on that.
Right.
Sinnett's regardless of his skill set, because he's been there, done that. I do feel like Sinnett's a guy that is a midseason pickup for an NFL team, and you add in the UFL salary, you add in another $70,000 from the NFL. Does he want to give this another go, or is he going to be comfortable from where he's at? And that's really like JG. I feel like is fighting for his job. Sinnett, I feel like, is making a business decision on what he wants to go. But nice little list of quarterbacks here, man. Yeah. 2 CFL guys, Silver's still around. Connor Cook's probably selling insurance, and Marcus McDade never really got an opportunity.
Marcus McDade. I know. Yeah.
Yeah, he was their third team guy. Right. St. Louis, I think similar situation. Do you like?
Look at this, man.
Yeah, this is a list. This
is.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Heineke. I think I made a tweet recently. I was talking about all the income earned since 2022, and by spring football players. And Heineke's like, believe it or not, it was 2019, and Mike Purcell is the number one guy. I think he's made like 18 mil. Young Hope, who will surpass him at some point. But yeah, I mean, Taylor Heineke, a solid 14 mil since 2020.
And to think he was a backup with the Battlehawks.
Yeah,
goes to Washington and he won some games for him. I mean, there's another gold standard guy.
I think he's a 500 career quarterback. I think he went 7-5 and a 5-4, and then that's kind of buoyed him to a 500 record with in his NFL career, which depending on who you talk to, is QB a winning stat? I don't know. It's a winning stat if you're trying to get some tweet impressions, because you'll have people that think you're a genius, and then you'll people that think you're incompetent. But I mean, the core three right now: AJ, Manny, and Brandon. I mean, we talked about what does AJ really want to do? It really comes down, and I think if AJ comes back, then you get the guys like, okay, I guess I'll give it another year. Is there unfinished business with AJ? He's a guy to me that doesn't matter the stats he puts up. He's still in the NFL circuit, and I think his stock, regardless of good games or bad games, because he's still in game shape. And he looked a lot more in shape this year than he did last year as far as mobility-wise. He was running a lot more.
Agreed. And even, when he was playing hurt, Bruce is your guy, but why would you call any kind of play at the end of that first half when he was already hobbled and made it known that he was not feeling well?
Yeah.
But dude plays through it. I mean, he plays through it, and you got to wonder if his purpose, he said, to come back was so his kids could watch him play and not sit on the bench with the Bengals. But you're right. I think AJ McCarron is still in the NFL circles. If that's he's got some options now. He might be the quarterback who has the most options in this league.
Yeah, John, I don't know if you've heard me say this. I've talked with a lot of people about it, and I feel like the two most entitled fan bases are Birmingham and St. Louis.
Yeah,
and I saw a lot of people last year that were like, AJ needs to come back. And I'm like, AJ McCarron does not need to do anything. He could relax. He can hang out with his wife, his kids, go to Little League, his brother. He's got businesses in the Alabama. I don't know if it's Mobile or Birmingham. I know he says his doctors are in Birmingham.
Yeah. Where every athlete's doctors are.
Yeah, right. Dr. James Andrews. Yeah, my doctor's there. You mean Dr. James Andrews? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that sense of he needs to always bothers me when that gets said. And something like we talked about it a little bit when Turpin was on the up was it's a lot of football that like Turpin played. I think it was like 24 out of 28 months he was playing football. When these guys do their spring football, the NFL, like McLeod played like almost 30 games in 365 days. Like that's not cool, man, on your body.
Well, and that was interesting. Michael Hugh, who was the commissioner of the original UFL, they played in the fall.
Yeah.
And he always said I think one of the reasons that he really got out of it is because they wanted to move to a spring schedule. And he said spring football will not work for players who want to get to the NFL. You're going to have a better opportunity if you're playing at the same time and you have the same offseason as the NFL and you're refreshed when you go into camp. As you said, I mean, these guys they're dead when they get into camp. So it's almost, it's already tough to get to the NFL. And when you see some of these guys coming out of spring football, I mean, you got to think it's like that's an extra layer of credit they should get to even get there because of the toll that it takes on your body to go straight from a spring season right into camp.
Yeah, and Mike Rose is a perfect example of that because Mike Rose, linebacker, he was hurt with the Battlehawks, gets an opportunity with the Dolphins, but you could clearly tell he was not 100%. And then this year anytime he's on the field, he's making plays, but he's hurt. And it's like, you look at the tape and you're like, okay, this guy's good to go. He's a guy that might want to take that futures. Like if I'm a GM, I'm like, I either sign him for a late practice squad tryout and then get him on a futures deal. And I'm like, hey, I do think you could play at this level, but don't go playing for the Battlehawks because you need the rest. Like you need to chill. So that's like there are some guys like that I'm just like, hey man, we need to like put you on the back burner, like and put you on a futures deal and have that come in the Jesus moment when you're like, hey, you need to chill out, dude. Like you will like, and I like give these guys a guarantee, like a $60,000 guarantee for their UFL salary. Or I don't know if you've noticed this, but in the NFL, for guys that they're going to sign for futures deals, they'll elevate them that last week as their signing bonus.
Oh, no, I did not know that, but it makes sense. It's like, and these guys don't want to be on the sideline. I don't, sure they want to sit on some money and, live their NFL dreams, but you're right. You got to, sometimes, as you said, you got to have that coming to Jesus moment with them to say, hey, listen, another season in this league is not going to help you. It might hurt you, literally hurt you. So take those future deals. And if I'm an NFL team and you start to scout this talent, say, here's what's in it for you. What could be in it for you? Selfishly, you want to see these guys play in the UFL, but personally, you want to see them succeed and live that dream.
Yeah, especially with spring football's, volatility and whatnot. It's just to me, it's kind of like I think some more transparent conversation. And Coach Beck very vocal of like, don't sign your futures deal, come to the NFL or the UFL, and I agree with him on the initial, like when he did that. But like when I think about Mike Rose this year, he's the guy that I'm like, that guy needs to chill, and like even Jared Jones-Smith, like that guy was kind of nagging towards the end of the year. And it's like now he's with Atlanta. Like, I feel like maybe he had that conversation with a team or two because I'm surprised he didn't get a futures deal with the Commanders. And personally, I think he might have turned it down and whatnot. So kicking down to the DC Defenders, they did what I like. They signed some random guy from a FCS school. They signed a lot of FCS guys towards the end. Yeah. What's the transition on this? Is Teamu, you think Teamu comes back for that another year? I think he's only 26 going into 27.
Yeah. He waited till it felt like the 11th hour to come back, much like AJ McCarron. So you have to think, and with the way it turned, I mean, I'm trying to play armchair psychologist here. I don't know Jordan Teamu or what, his motivations, but you got to wonder for a guy who waited so long before camp started to sign. And then the way things went south during the season, does he want to come back or what are his options if he doesn't? I think he's probably a little, as far as a quarterback goes, if he doesn't get an NFL opportunity, he's too young to maybe give it up. But you got to wonder if he wants to go to a different situation. So yeah, it's that to me, Jordan Ta'amu to me is a 50-50 shot.
Yeah, and it really comes down to, I think Ta'amu personally kind of got the short end of the stick on a lot of stuff. I mean, they lost 3 receivers to retirement NFL. Yep. They had a ton of injuries, 3 offensive linemen gone. I hope you've heard me say this, but like, no De'Aaron King puts on so much pressure on this guy to not only the hits, but just the, the pulling of the read options and whatnot. Like that puts, now he's in there for extra snaps, extra hits. Yep. Jalen McClendon does not run as well as King. DeAndre Francois does not know how to play outdoor football. Like these are guys that, do not, I think McClendon is a good quarterback for your 60 minutes, but I don't want him, you can't run the read option with him. So it's like, I feel that Ta'amu is also in kind of a Case Cook's camp of like, what are we doing here type stuff. Yeah. Like, and that's, I don't know. I don't think they run it back with this room. I hope for Ta'amu. I'd like to see him bring this Mike DeLeo kid around, whether he can be the QB2. I would keep McClendon around, but I'm gutting Francois. I mean, this man. I can't believe
he's still in the league.
He's stealing opportunities from people, and I hate to say it like that, but like we know who he is. Like we saw, first off, the rumor. I don't know if it's a rumor anymore because from what I've been told, the stuff he did to Quentin Dormandy, disrespectful. Right. How do you have a job? 1, 2, you've played in the spring league where you lost your job to Ben Holmes. You were pretty average in fan-controlled football. You have gotten 2, 3, 4 opportunities to prove that you are a competent quarterback, and you have failed. And you weren't the most high-character guy in college.
I never got it. I mean, what was other than the Quentin Dormady situation in Orlando, like what was he really known for? He was known for being caught on the mic telling the huddle to shut the F up.
Yeah.
And it just, which quarterbacks sometimes have to take control. I'm not questioning that. But yeah, to me, that was it. I mean, he was a bad quarterback for a pretty incompetent staff down there. I mean, that's my opinion.
Shane Matthews was the only Shane Matthews, in my opinion, got put in the worst situation that probably ruined his career because he seemed like the only competent guy on that staff.
And he's a guy who knows, what these spring footballs and alternative football is all about. And that's why I was kind of excited for Quentin Dormady. Is like he gets out of that situation because when he did play and he wasn't surrounded by just that craziness in Orlando, I was like, man, this guy could go to San Antonio, play for A.J. Smith and Wade Phillips, and, might be able to do something. And then Chase Garbers, who I could not have picked out of a lineup before the season, comes in there, and he's like, wow, this guy's pretty good. So, but yeah, you're right. And you talked about the losing all that talent for Jordan Ta'amu, and you do talk about like Lucky Jackson, some of those other guys who went to the NFL. But you think about what you pointed out there, how big of a loss was De'Aaron King, and how much did they probably appreciate him in 24 than they probably, than they did in 23, probably a lot more.
Yeah. And it's just, I think you have to, and we'll talk about this when my next wave of like who the next generation is type stuff.
Yeah.
But I just think in spring football, if you're going to have an AJ McCarron, granted, he's kind of the exception because the dude can pick apart when given the opportunity, can pick apart a defense. You need to have the guy who could add some relief. And we saw the taste of it with Arlington, which is one of the next teams that we'll talk about, obviously. But we saw a taste of it with Arlington. Granted, Luis Perez, from a passing standpoint, best football he's played in his career, which
Isn't I hope crazy. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. Pushing the ball downfield, the arm strength could hit he could hit seams, he could hit, the skinny post of the tight end, but he can hit the boundary now. And I was like, this is cool. I like this. Like,
it is crazy to see the step. I mean, he was already good. We know that.
yeah,
To take that next step and to move and to do what he did and have statistically his best season for
yeah.
one of the worst teams in the league, it says a whole lot about Luis Perez.
Yeah, and I mean Anthony Miller goes into nauseum about the defense and whatnot. Like that, they were putting up they were putting up good games, whatnot offensively, but the defense can't match. I mean, Caleb Van Der Esch, who was a guy for them last year, going into that like wide receiver 4 role and having these other guys step up. No one that like blows my mind as far as their receiving group outside of Sal Cannella. You have Davion Smith there, who's a good running back. Letty Brown's a good running back and whatnot. Offensive line, I think was pretty okay. I think Jake Lucina put together another good season. Bobby Evans, that's a guy who's probably going to get signed at some point to an NFL team. But like the Renegades were a conundrum in itself.
Yeah.
A lot like the Gamblers of 2022.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. This list, I think you run it back with this quarterback room. I mean, maybe.
How do you not? Like, unless you can't, unless they go somewhere else. How would you not? Holton Ahlers, who we know, saw a little bit of him in the preseason with the Seahawks, looked good. Lindsey Scott Jr., I mean, that guy's dynamic. And then, of course, Luis Perez.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have a quick plug on Perez if he doesn't play to the same standard.
Yeah.
And then you just run it with Lindsey Scott's my next man up.
Yeah.
I mean, Holton Ahlers, to me, like, I think he's kind of, probably not the coolest guy to be around. He kind of said some things in the preseason that I was like, who is this guy? Who are you?
Like when he said the coaches told him they want a younger guy to come in there and win the job.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that fueled Perez. I mean,
could have.
But I mean, I run this room back, and I don't think Lindsey Scott's really got anything going on. I can see Holton Ahlers being a good third down, second down, short yardage CFL guy. I mean, those guys are usually pretty, high probability of employment in the CFL. So,
right.
I mean, one of them is going to have to retire for him to, find his way up there and whatnot. And, even in Toronto, Cameron Dukes does a good job of that. And I don't move off this quarterback room. I might give Drew Plitt a call as my camp, Bobby.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless he overperforms over Ahlers, which, hopefully for Plitt, his week with the Battlehawks hopefully kept him relevant for another cycle. But yeah, I mean, with Arlington, you run it back. Where's the shakeup here in Birmingham?
Jamar Smith, is he going to do this for another year? Like, Jamar has gone from the lowest lows to the highest highs and then back to the lowest lows. So, and interesting that Alex Magoo is, changed his position to stay in the NFL. Yeah. Does Matt Corral come back? I think Adrian Martinez might be the guy who's got, some options here. So, yeah, I mean, this will be interesting, but I'll say this about Skip Holtz. He could put you or me in there at quarterback, and I think he could win some games.
Yeah. I mean, I thought they should have started Jamar this year. I
agreed.
I think, and in sports, you got to earn every day, obviously, but I felt that you would get the highest of highs with Corral and Martinez, and then you would get some bad days with them. But I felt like Jamar Smith would have gave you your 191, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, good running game. I thought Zaquandre White was going to be a bigger piece of this. You can't never count out CJ Marable. But, I mean, like you said, they can put anyone in there. And they're the champs until they're not. And that's something I tell people all the time. It's like, I don't know what Jamar does. I want to see him get 5 rings. Like I'm all in on Birmingham right now.
Yeah.
Because at this point, you get to a point where you're the villain to me, then you're the just dominate. Like get the rings. I don't care.
Right. Well, it was funny you talked about the entitlement of fans in Birmingham and St. Louis, but I think it's on 2 different spectrums.
Yeah.
The entitlement with St. Louis, they show up for games. They feel entitled because they're very good.
Yeah.
With Birmingham, they're a great team, obviously, but people don't show up. So that entitlement is almost, it's like they almost take them for granted down there.
I think they do. I really,
yeah.
I'm willing to buy into Birmingham more if they do the games after the Super Bowl, because I would not want to be outside in Alabama heat.
You know, I went this year, the final game of the regular season, and it was, you know, and now granted, it was raining, there were storms, but you know, it was like maybe 4,000 people there, and they said it was a lot more, and it's just, and then I did when the USFL started in 2022, I went down there, and there were no clouds in the skies, and it's the dead middle of, you know, June or July, or it was June, I guess. And it's a lot. But on the converse of that, we can make those excuses. But back in the day, in the World Football League, the original USFL, they were playing spring football and they were turning out. Now I know it's a different world. But you know, there's always, you have to turn out for your team, especially when they keep winning championships. But you're right. And taking nothing away from Matt Corral or Adrian Martinez's talent to say that you can pretty much start anyone at quarterback. Skip Holtz brings out the best in these guys.
Yeah.
And he really did. I loved the signing of Matt Corral because I thought Matt Corral had talent. He just needed to put it together. He was very open about, you know, some of the mental health issues that he had gone through in the NFL. And this felt like that not only was Skip Holtz kind of giving him a lifeline, but it felt like Skip Holtz knew that he could really help this guy and make him a better quarterback. And we saw some of it. There's no question. But Adrian Martinez, like, I mean, before the season, people were like, were telling me Adrian Martinez is going to be the starter on this team. I'm like, it's going to be Jamar or Matt Corral. And then Adrian Martinez starts, and then it was over after that. So, but yeah, it's like Skip Holtz will be very lucky if he can keep that quarterback room intact.
Yeah, I think Amart's a practice squad guy. I mean, he was almost a practice squad guy in Detroit. They had Hayden Hooker, Nate Sudfeld was there before he got hurt. Right. Teddy, you know, you signed Teddy Bridgewater, and then I think they had David Blau as there as your QB3, which in the NFL, if you have a QB3 with 5+ starts under your belt on a cheap salary, you're in a good spot. It's the reverse opposite, you know, for my take on the UFL or spring ball in general. But I think Amart's gone. And another thing too with Amart that people don't talk about this enough is depending on who his team is, if he goes to like an AFC North team, who do they play? They play the Ravens. There's your guy if you're playing them twice a week, a year. Teams do this. They sign those practice squad guys to, you know, be the decoy. They do it with, you know, and we'd have to jumble down all the rosters of teams play, but you know, the NFL has a lot of people on staff. You're not telling me that they're like, hey, we play Lamar Jackson twice, Josh Allen, you know, go down mobile quarterback. This guy can give us a look 7 out of the 18 weeks. He put together some decent film. Why would we not sign this guy? So that might be a flyer, but I think that actually matters because once again, there's big staffs. Someone's looking at this stuff.
Mm-hmm. There's no question. I think he showed that he has NFL talent, whether it is, like you said, to emulate Lamar Jackson in practice, but I think he also has potential there. Just you know, it wasn't a large body of work. I mean, you got to think, like, there were some games he didn't play to start off, but he really, like, you know, he worked into that as a starter and didn't give it up because he was that good.
I will say though, I don't think that he was the MVP though, because I think Matt Corral showed that he had less value when Matt Corral came in and won those games.
I guess it's according to how you define MVP. Yeah. You know, that's the age-old question. It's like, was he the most valuable player for his team? Was he really the most valuable player in the league? How did that work? It's hard for me to take anything away from that kid though, because he was just so good. He was so good.
I mean, the thing I always equate to Andrew Luck being the most valuable player in the NFL when he played, because when he didn't play,
They
outside of
sucked.
Matt, yep, and outside of the corpse, and no one talks about this. No one talks about the 2015 renaissance of Matt Hasselbeck, who was dying with a lacerated spleen. And
Right.
he goes like 6-3, keeps him in the playoff hunt.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he was 41 years old. This poor man. But
as a
yeah,
Seahawks fan, I loved seeing it because and I actually got a
dude.
chance to meet Matt Hasselbeck, one of the nicest guys in the world too. It's funny, but it really was. It was like it was like Joe Flacco later on. Like Joe
Oh
Flacco's
yeah,
doing what?
yeah.
With
He's putting it together, man. I mean,
yeah.
Hasselbeck, the Hasselbeck Delhomme era of NFC quarterbacks is something that will go totally underappreciated in football time. Because if you do Sporkle like I do sometimes, and they're like the top 10 or top 5 passing quarterbacks from like that mid 2000s, you're gonna have a lot of Matt Hasselbeck. You're gonna have a lot of Jake Delhomme, and you'll have some Jake Plummer in there, which I think Jake Plummer gets a lot more credit now than he did when he was playing, because of his stuff with like
100%.
yeah, and also like his stuff with cannabis and helping veterans, Pat Tillman, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But Memphis, we running it back, John?
Case Cook is that's the question mark. I think that is the big question mark. I really like Troy Williams too. I liked what he could do and what he has done, but it's just I don't know if Case Cook comes back. I'd like to see him come back, but to me, as we touched on before, I think he's got to have some assurances and see it on paper that there's going to be some changes in that offensive line.
Yeah. You think Josh Love extended his career?
That's a good point.
Yeah,
like Josh Love came out of nowhere for a couple of games. It's like, that guy's actually really, he's pretty good. He can play. So you might be right. I don't think it's next level yet, but I think that he absolutely will catch on if it's not in Memphis, somewhere in the UFL.
Yeah, it's like Josh Love's this is the. And I was talking, to my wife about it. I was like, this is the 12-team conundrum, the 16-team conundrum. It's like, I don't want Josh Love or Troy Williams anymore as my QB1, but I want them on my roster. But then I don't want them taking my QB3 spot because I want my no name. And it's like, where do we win here? I mean, I think you build off Case and then you figure it out with the other two. I mean, I think Josh wants to play. I know that. Troy probably wants to play. I know that. And it's like, it's just, too many chefs, not enough kitchens, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're right.
This is the fun one. This is
because Paxton Lynch is on the list.
Yeah, and also every one of these quarterbacks have played. Like every one of these quarterbacks have played significant time, and that's
it's crazy.
Yeah. And now they're they're a 2-time playoff team. Part of me thinks that they were the better team in the USFL championship game for 3+ quarters. I mean,
I thought it was over. I thought it was over. But when you look at what Mike Nolan did, now there were some teams that had, San Antonio was the same. There were some teams that had to, do some quarterback shuffling and, but what he was able to do with 4 quarterbacks, I think it was 4, maybe even 5 that ended up playing. I mean, it was insane, like how many played, as you said. And then Danny Etling, who I was not completely sold on before the season, like he had some moments where I thought he was much better. I don't think Ryan Lewerke is ever going to be the answer.
No.
And EJ Perry too. Like EJ Perry was, dynamic and doing a lot of good things. So the Panthers will be interesting if they brought that quarterback, let's say they bring back, Etling, Perry, and, maybe Perkins, or sign another 3 somewhere, like, one of your guys, from Division 7 that, that we all love to see. We love to see those stories come up in AIA Division 4. But honestly, like, Mike Nolan winning games with Danny Etling and EJ Perry to the extent that he did, I think that was pretty impressive. And those guys are good and could get better, and and really, could play in tandem, I think, in Michigan.
Yeah. I think Perry and Perkins are gone. I think Perry had a drug deal, to be honest with you. I think he goes, back to, he might go back to Jacksonville personally. And the reason why is they have CJ Beathard there. They have Mac Jones there. Do you want CJ Beathard as your 3? Do you want the expensive 3, or do you want the cheap 3 who's played in your system? I could see that. I think Perkins, his rushing ability, his athleticism, I think that's enough. I don't know if they get the futures deal, but now we're talking about, especially Perry, who had some practice squad time and NFL workouts. We're talking about fatigue and all that. Like, it goes back to, like, have I done enough? And I think he has. He's still young. I think Etling is a guy that, he comes back if he wants to come back, he's a guy who could be an MVP candidate. I mean, stronger arm than Magoo, not as athletic, more experience. That's a guy, that I could see making a jump to the MVP. And, if you lose Perry and you lose Perkins, you got Lewerke, who's been there for 2 years. This guy gets a job again. And John, you're absolutely right. All 4 of these guys played good football. Like, all 4 of them played good football. Marcel Belfieur I was critical at first because he came from the Case Cookus as his quarterback, Brian Scott as his quarterback, to these more mobile guys. And you saw him adjust. And that's when I became a fan of him as a play caller. Because at first I was like, he's not adapting. He's not. And you saw how bad EJ was against the Battlehawks.
Yeah. And you're right about that. It's like, we give a lot of credit to Mike Nolan, but you're right. With that OC and the way that he was able to say, let me design. You don't play my game. Let me design to your strengths. Yeah. And he did that over the course of the season. And that's why I think they were so good. That's a very good point.
Yeah. He figured it out, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
San Antonio. First off, the signing of Jaden DeLauro, not on the same level of DeAndre Francois, but this man had pending charges and was playing in this league. This is a 2-year team that's had, go down the list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 in 2 years.
That's
a lot. That's a lot of jerseys.
It really, I mean, and you look at it, I mean, the Kevin Hogan signing, as we talked about, that was kind of an emergency mid-season deal, but the rest of these, I thought Quentin Dormady was going to be the guy in San Antonio. I really did.
Yeah. And he had the flashes. I think AJ Smith's offense got figured out.
Yes. And really, in that championship game, the reason it was so bad, it felt like he never, AJ Smith, he's won more games than I have as an offensive coordinator, but I can tell you, maybe run the ball a few times. It was just so weird that they got away from that. And, you saying that with maybe he got figured out, I do wonder, which I agree with, I do wonder if that was a point where he was like, well, I've been figured out of here, so I'm going to do something that is so crazy they'll never figure it out, and it didn't work. And when you have a quarterback on Mike, you have a quarterback saying, I went to him and was trying to tell him, man, we got to throw the ball. I mean, we got to run the ball some more. A quarterback who didn't want to throw the ball that much, there's a problem.
And that's the thing, too, is you saw the Birmingham drop off between John Chavis to Corey Chamberlain. Yeah. And the fact that defense put up 0 points, and this isn't disrespected. I don't know if Corey Chamberlain figured it out. I don't know if Anthony Blevins being there figured it out. I don't know. I don't want to take credit away from them because they're accomplished coaches, but you can't tell me these guys look so lost and you figured it out in 3 weeks in a week. No. I just, John Chavis been there almost 3 years, 3 seasons. Yeah. Chamberlain's been there. I get it, but you saw the drop off. So I don't know if it was Skip. I don't know if Chamberlain figured it out. I don't know if it was Blevins showing up because, you know, he was a head coach. He was unemployed.
For a cup of coffee.
I can imagine once he got that job, he was on the film like that. And then he comes in with a bag of tricks. Like maybe that was it. Maybe I'm not giving enough credit for Blevins, who I think, you know, I hope he's still around in the circle in the circuit. But I mean, this quarterback room, I'm not really sure who's coming back. I don't think Hogan comes back. I think he's kind of like, call me if you need me type thing.
Right. I mean, he's going to be 32 this year. I don't know that he wants to do it. Like, I mean, maybe he does. I mean, who knows? But it just seems to me like that's not a guy. I don't know that he was that invested before the season about being in the UFL. And he was, somebody had him on speed dial. Like, oh my God, we've got to have we got to get another guy in here quick.
Yeah. They called PJ Walker. They did call him.
Right.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
why would PJ do it though?
Yeah, I mean, I can call people too. Doesn't mean they're gonna, you know. right. I got a lot of phone numbers in my phone book. People ain't calling me back, you know.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah. There's really no one that like. You got to think it's still it's still a 23 Houston staff. Do you bring back Silvers? You know, did you like Caleb Elby enough? You know, Cole McDonald's still working out. He was up in the CFL for 5 minutes. Those are, you know, who's your Chase Garbers? Who's your flyer? Right. You know what I mean? Like Tom Flacco, I consider a flyer. Jaden DeLora, a flyer. I mean, I think Dormandy to me is the only guy you bring back.
I could see that. I mean, because do you think that Chase Garbers will move on, or do you just not want him back?
I mean, I think when you break down the film and you see he kind of left it in a bad way on the field a little bit.
Right.
I think a guy like Wade is not going to put up with that BS.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think Wade comes back?
Yeah, I think he does.
I think so.
I think, and I hate to say things like this, but I think when you get to a certain point in your life, if you're not doing something, you fade.
Yeah. I think that's a good point.
I think this is I'd like to see him, and I think we saw it this year, I felt last year, the first half of the season, he was very involved with Brian Stewart.
Yeah.
And then I saw Brian Stewart take more. And I feel like he doesn't really mess around with the offense that much. Now, I would like to see more of that to his coordinators next year, like where he just kind of walks in the building and they're running the meetings. I think he's invested with AJ. I think he's invested with Peyton Pardee, 2 guys he's had on his hip for a couple of years. I mean, I think he's invested with Lillibridge pretty heavily as well, the GM, DPP. His wife goes to the games. Football's been his life.
Yeah.
I worry about, and he seems, you know, cognitively, it doesn't seem like there's a delay. Like,
no,
you know,
you've watched him too, the post game, you know, news conferences. He's totally fine there. I just wonder if AJ Smith doesn't try to pursue a head coaching opportunity somewhere. And if that duo gets broken up, then San Antonio might have some problems.
Yeah. No, I think that's a transparent conversation between, you know, the league, AJ and Wade. You know, maybe Wade takes less money. They give AJ more money, give him a fancy title of assistant head coach.
Right.
I mean, those things matter, you know, so it's
sure
kind of like, I mean, that's really, what's Wade going to do? Become the special advisor to one of his NFL buddies? That's really it. And that's more demanding than this.
I'm sorry, you know, except for after the championship game, he really seemed to be having a good time with this.
Yeah.
I mean, just so many times he's called on mic and called on camera.
He's the best. He's the best. But this breaks it down, you know, into the next cycle. We'll run through this a little bit more, but who's next? Who's next? If you want to chime in with guys I didn't put in there, let me know. But NFL free agents. This is a guy that they have, you know, kind of beat the drum on, currently unemployed, very Alex Magoo-like.
right? He's 28. You got to wonder, and he was open to being in the UFL. He said if the opportunity presented itself and it was the right opportunity, he would talk about it.
Yeah.
So you do wonder, a guy who's bounced around, and we'll talk. A lot of these guys have bounced around the NFL with varying degrees of success. But with Trace McSorley, who I always thought was a good quarterback coming into the league, it was just, is he more of the UFL, as we say, the 4A player, than he is maybe an NFL starter somewhere? I think he would be great for the UFL, and I think he would succeed for sure.
Yeah. Perfect fit to me is DC.
Yeah.
Even if Te'amu comes back, you get rid of Francois. You're not high on McClendon. If Te'amu doesn't come back, I think you can fight him for a day one start. If he does, then you can use him as a read option, get cute. But I mean, this is a guy that I think has enough juice left to where it's kind of like the Landry Jones situation, where
right.
either do a good job and stick around, or fail, and now we know, on to the next one. And going to the next one, Kellen Mond's a guy as well who was recently released from the Saints. To kind of just hold the brakes on this a little bit, is about a year and change ago, I wrote an article for Reed about the QB purge that was coming. And we've seen increased retirements. We've seen the backlog of backup QBs like Chase Daniel go into media. David Blau, he's retired. He's coaching. Ryan Griffin was a guy who didn't play for years. Granted, he just played in the Italian Football League, won the MVP, which just shows the skill level. Blows my mind. Right. Threw like 40 touchdowns. We're seeing now that transition of backlog from the NFL trickle down a little bit into the UFL with your consistent 4 guys there who are your starters in, AJ, Jordan, Luis, and Case Cookus. Like, those are your guys, your air quote franchise QBs.
Right.
And they really need to figure out if that's what they want. And that's where Emery Hunt, his points are valid. It's just these guys have been good players. How do you get rid of them?
Yeah, I mean, Kellen Mond, I think most people they'll remember about him is when they asked Mike Zimmer why Kellen Mond didn't go in the game, and they're like, "Why didn't you play him?" He said, "Because I see him every day," and he just absolutely killed him with the Vikings.
Oh, my God.
And it just, it never did work out. It never did really work out for him. But I could see him, like, maybe, again, we talk about getting a new life. It's like he was only in the league for 3 years, and could still probably catch on somewhere. But 4 teams in 3 years, you got to wonder if he might be a guy who says, "Well, let me get something on tape that's better than what I have presented so far," and the UFL could be a good fit.
This reeks of a Brett Hundley situation.
Brett Hundley, yeah, that was the guy. He was going to come in and light it up. You're right.
This reeks of, we got Kellen Mond. He comes in and it doesn't work out well. This is the home. Speaking
of not working out.
Oh my God, this is not going to happen. But I like when I make these. I like the background, and I found him in the Miami Dolphins colors, and I thought it would look good on camera and whatnot. But do we bank on this? Does that trust fund get a little bit low? Is he sick of playing tennis? Does he any shot at this whatsoever, or is the entitlement too high?
Well, we're trying to get into the mind of, I hate using the word bust, because there's, so many, there are so many factors that go into number 1 picks and first round picks. And then you get that bust, hung on an individual, but it has not worked out for Josh Rosen. And in fact, when you start looking at, it wasn't like he got traded to these teams. He signed some of these, I think, with maybe even the Browns, like a 1-year deal, and they just didn't re-sign him.
Yeah.
I don't know. Josh Rosen might just want to go ahead and sit on his pile of cash and and just say, I can't play any more football. And it would be, as you kind of said, the entitlement, but like, I don't know what he would gain out of like coming to the UFL or anything. Just football. He was such a good player coming out of college, and it just, talk about something that did not work and has not worked.
Yeah. I mean, do I think he was set up to fail in Arizona a little bit? you don't have you don't have Steve Wilkes as your head coach. I would have probably asked Carson Palmer to stay another year. Bridge the gap, please. I think they had Sam Bradford there and Mike Glennon, and that did not work out at all.
Didn't Rosen get straight out cut after the season? Like it wasn't even. I don't
no,
even.
He got traded for like a third to Miami.
Oh, he did get okay.
And then he went over there. Fitzpatrick was there, and then they also had Brian Flores was there. Another defensive-minded head coach who's who's around Tom Brady, Brian Hoyer, right. Guys who have even Garoppolo. Guys who knew how to play the position. So I doubt he had much communication with quarterbacks and whatnot.
Yeah.
This is my last one. I like this one. 26 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Jacob Eason, highly touted out of Washington and Georgia, Lake Stevens native, has played a little bit. This is a guy I think, could surprise people. He's unsigned right now. What do you have to lose with a Jacob Eason guy?
Didn't he go into I was thinking he might even recently went with the Packers. I know they're the Giants. It didn't work out. And then, but either way, yeah. I mean, that seems like a guy who could really benefit, when you bounce around like that, with 5 or 6 teams or whatever, then go to the UFL. I like him. And I think that's, a guy who was a 4th round pick in a very weird 2020 draft. So many things were going on. I think that, I think he would be a great fit for almost anyone.
Yeah. He's got a little bit of actual game experience. I think he's thrown 10 passes or something like that. I just don't see the downside of bringing him in. It's like
none.
There's been way more other incompetent players to come through this league. Why not him, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think he might have a little bit more competence in some. That's right.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. There's 2 that we're confused about. So next part of this, we're going to break down 2 guys from all the way to Division 4. We'll try to run through it quick. But we're grinding on this. But Cam Ward, this is a guy who I think there was some confusion in the offseason, declared for the NFL draft, got a grade he didn't want. I think he's a better version of Lindsey Scott. I think he's a better thrower of the football than Lindsey Scott while still touting the athletic ability. This is a guy that, he's class of, going into next year. Like this is someone that you might want to, jump on a little bit quick.
Yeah, I think he'll get some looks at Miami. I think he can do big things this year. You're more of the college football guy than I am, but it just seems that there's some, even as well traveled as he is, it didn't seem like there was any kind of red flag for him to end up in Miami. This isn't the 80s anymore. So that could be a very good fit for him. So he could do some big things there for sure.
Yeah. The only red flag I had is that his dad tried to be a pseudo Caleb Williams a little bit. Yeah. And his dad put out like, it wasn't because of the draft grade. We just needed to develop. And it's like, dude, if you're a 3rd round pick, you're probably still coming out of the NFL draft, man. Like, right. Yeah. Caleb Elby forgoed 2 years, came out of the NFL. It came out for the NFL draft in Western Michigan, and it did not work out for him.
Right. Yeah. This
one I like a lot.
Was this one of the strangest transfers that you've seen in the transfer portal?
Yeah. What was it? They brought in Will Howard before the bowl game, right? And he was just like, I'm good, bro. And then they had Devin Brown there, number 33, and then another guy. I think it's perfect for him, Like I think he's going to fly under the radar. He's going to have a rookie mini camp here or there, but I think he just doesn't have the experience, the athletic ability, and he's going to have to prove to people that you could still be a Peyton Manning statue back there and go.
Yeah. He said, it was just business, and that's why he, left Ohio State after that year. But you're right. You pointed out in your notes when we were talking that, he needs more experience, and, 13 starts and 12 wins, pretty good. But, you've got to build a body of work.
Yeah. I mean, those are my two guys. I was going
Yeah.
to put DJ, I can't even say his name, DJ Ungole in there, but then I realized he had 2 more years of experience and whatnot. Going down to FCS, Division 1 AA, as it was called, coming up. When I start breaking down these guys, John, I really don't actually look into their stats more. The only stats I really look into is their measurables, if they transferred, and their rushing ability, because I think that's what's going to get them here. And this young man's, put it together about 800 yards rushing last year. He comes from UT Chattanooga, which is where Terrell Owens went, and Nick Tiano.
Oh,
yeah. I think there's a recency bias here. And BJ Coleman, former Packers backup, who did play in the UFL as well. So there's a lineage thing here.
Right. I can see it, there. And when we talk about the UFL, it's no slight against smaller schools or, middle tier, or whatever you want, mid majors, whatever you want to call them. There's a reason that the Player 54 brand, was a thing, and, League of Opportunity and all that. There are guys now, granted, he did play at UCLA, but went to UT Chattanooga. Might even have 2 years of eligibility. I don't know, but it's like, if there are situations that sometimes your pedigree will allow you in and into an NFL, on an NFL roster, and then you have to prove your talent somewhere else. If you're you're a UT, somebody from UT Chattanooga. Again, I think that's why these guys can get a better opportunity in the UFL. And even if it's for a season, you get that body of work because you never got an opportunity, at some of these. You were the Player 54, and he might be a guy who's just like that.
Yeah, I mean, I always like the transfer because it shows that he popped on a radar in some way. But I mean, to me, like, between him and this next gentleman we'll talk about, the size is there, the arm strength is there. Let's take a flyer on this. And I was talking to John Vogel about this young man today, Paxton De Laurent, coming out from NAIA, Central Methodist, historically bad, not the best program, going to Southeast Missouri State, SEMO as it's called. This is a big dude, 6'6", about 220, size is there. Played with a gentleman named Ryan Flournoy, who he went to a 6th-round pick of the Cowboys. They're losing some weapons. They're losing running back Geno Hess. So to me, because of this man, if he can put it all together with a less than stellar supporting cast, they'll have some eyeballs on there. And they have an offensive guard who's a transfer as well that is going to get NFL looks. I don't know if he'll get signed, obviously, but that's going to have some eyeballs on him. He is a better version of Connor Dakenhart, who I really like as well.
Yeah. And it was big. He was one. I think he was one of the top 10 returning FCS quarterbacks. He was rated that, and he does Manning Academy stuff. I mean, there's so much that he's going to get all this knowledge and be, like you said, a guy who's at SEMO who can start getting some eyeballs. And as you said, with the UFL, to me, and I think you're right about that. When you can pass, number one, but you also can be mobile and run the ball. And then as you talked about him being 6'6" and being able to do all that, I mean, that's a pretty good combination that any team on any level would like to have.
And his name is Paxton. So
you've got a thing for Paxton. I get it.
I got it. A D2 home stretch here, John. I know we've been at this for way longer than I thought we would.
Oh, it's great, man. Let's go. We'll go all day.
Oh, geez. D2 prospects. This guy, man, he's already on CFL neg list. Zach Zabrowski. His father is the OC at KU. Gaudy numbers. I believe he won the Harlan Hill last year. We've had Roland Rivers, we've had Luis Perez, Harlan Hill winners in this league.
Yep.
They'll know who this guy is. I'm willing to guarantee his dad's willing to help him out. Someone there is gonna take notice on this dude. I could see him being a mid-season signing, possibly, and with him on the CFL neg list already, people know who he is. And I thought that was a big thing when making this list.
Well, yeah, you talked about Luis Perez there, the Harlan Hill Award winner and all that. And you look at what he did, you see that he transferred from Southern Illinois to Central Missouri. It just didn't work for him at Southern Illinois.
Yeah.
And then he blows it up at Central Missouri. Now, he maybe moved down a level, but talent is talent. And we've seen that that D2 talent can translate certainly in the UFL and, maybe in even the NFL and CFL. So, yeah, I think that is a really good pick. It'll be interesting to see after this season what happens with him.
Yeah, I mean, it's someone, and worst case, he shows up to a showcase, and he's local. I could see him being in St. Louis.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
it's not a far drive.
Yeah, I mean, it's might as well, right? Sammy Edwards. The biggest thing I liked about Sammy is he's got a decent amount of experience, but it's the rushing ability. The measurables are hard to find on this guy as far as with like what's his 40 time, but they did have some info on these like draft blog sites where obviously there's hundreds of quarterbacks that Sammy I felt could be a guy that like, oh, this guy we haven't heard about, going into his senior year was a top 10 passer, good rushing ability. I mean, it's kind of a make or break year for him, like in my opinion, nothing too crazy, but a lot of the top tier talent at D2 are still underclassmen. So that's something that's a little bit, something to throw into the fold as well.
And you pointed out in your notes that when you're scouting these guys and looking at them, he's probably going to have to put on some pounds here.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. I mean, but I think that's the key to the castle as far as like these guys getting the shot at the next level. Are they big enough? Are they able to like kind of, gut it out, take the hits? Because now
durability can always be an issue. You're right.
Yeah. And he was a Harlan Hill finalist. So that, there's a good track record with them as well, as far as coming up. My next two are Flyers. Now,
we're getting into Pat Ruffino territory here. Division III, let's go.
Yeah. So this young man, Destin Chance, put together 4 games of 6 touchdowns and more. Breaking all the records at Illinois College, D3, led him to the playoffs, won a playoff game. He reminds me of a guy who played at Hartwick College. He played with my coaches. His name was Jason Boltus. He had a good Arena League career. Now, the Arena League's already on this guy. Not that that matters at all, but the Arena League is on this guy. I've talked to 2 guys there, and I could definitely see a CFL team that has ties to the area, checking this dude out. Right. And the Bears always look at these random local colleges. So when his name shows up for the rookie minicamp thing, and then he disappears into anonymity, definitely all those like check marks right there.
What do you think are the strikes against him as a D3 prospect trying to come out to the next level?
I would say the arm strength could be definitely an issue. The speed of the game is like going to be an issue. The offense, from what I've seen, because I've looked at film of him, looks very simplistic. But I think, and I talked to John Vogel about this, is when you just put up numbers, it gets people to your page, for lack of a better term.
Right.
So he throws up, you throw 20, it was like 25 touchdowns in 4 games. People are going to care. Yeah. Now, how much do they care? I don't know. But it gets that regional scout on the radar. And I could definitely see this guy, just making a little bit of noise. And once again, if you're close enough to go to a showcase, that means something, right?
Yeah, I think that, proximity certainly matters a lot, like real estate. But, too, it's like what Bill Parcells, I'll show my age here, but what Bill Parcells always said about Phil Simms. Phil Simms played at Morehead State. And he's like, if you're talented, it doesn't matter where you play. Scouts will find you. That's what that's what they're paid to do. Good scouts are paid to find talent, whether it's at the Power 5 or it's, Illinois College.
Yeah. I mean, it's a flyer, but it's just, I don't know. I just think like that, like seeing him put together those 4 games, I mean, essentially, Adrian Martinez won his his MVP in 5 games. So
Right. Yeah.
these hot streaks, they mean something.
That's true.
This young man, though, fast, mobile, D3 Heisman winner, small college guy as well, won games, national champion. I believe he's a lefty. This is the dude, or no, he's not a lefty. I was thinking about the another gentleman we'll talk about. This is a dude. Another one that I'm not going to be surprised about.
What do you think? With him again, I'm counting on your scouting here because you're deep into. What do you think would be like if there were any attributes for him to get to a starting job in the UFL? What are they?
Oh, just the rushing ability.
Yeah,
the rushing ability.
Boy, mobility means a lot in the UFL.
Yeah, the avoid. I think he's 6'2". He needs to add weight. Yeah. But I mean, I think he's a weaker arm. Nolan Henderson would be the comp. I think he can avoid the rush. I think honestly, from what I saw, he's quick enough. He could even play receiver a little bit.
Yeah.
But I just think once again, he's thrown for almost 10,000 yards in 3 years in college. 1,000-yard rusher in college. I mean, this is national champion, winner. Right. All the tools and traits. I know we used to call it intangibles. Do these guys become stars at this point? These D3 guys, probably not. But there are guys that they pop, and and they seem well liked, and there's a lot of ability here that I personally feel that is untapped. That we've seen crazier things happen in these leagues. Like, no one knew who Mike DeLeo was coming out of school. Right. I don't think he even had a rookie minicamp, situation going on. Connor Blumberg, he was a tight end. Crazier things have happened in this league. Luis Perez, being
right. Luis Perez is like, I mean, we could always use him as an example of 1,000 different things, but talent finds its way. Scouts find talent. It can work.
My final two, thank God, right? We've been doing this for an hour and a half.
I love it, man. Let's keep going.
Let's keep going. This gentleman right here, I think is a CFL guy, to be honest with you. I think he's a CFL guy. He's a bigger bodied dude, good athleticism, actually played in games at Boise State. He, to me, is the perfect, scrum quarterback. Good passer, has gotten better, statistically over the years and whatnot. But I think the big body, the FBS pedigree, doing really well in NAIA. I think he's a guy that can kind of pop on this. And, the thing is I wasn't going to include NAIA at first, but Jalen Gromstead, the NAIA quarterback who goes to the Nebraska camp, who could fight for the starting job, that could put some eyeballs on this level of football. And I think when you do have these big school transfers, they transfer down. I think that actually does a lot for the division to show the talent that they play against. Because Devin Adams is in the CFL right now. Cameron Dukes, quarterback, NAIA guy, couple NAIA guys in the UFL already. Jeremiah Farms is an NAIA guy on the Patriots in their rotation. This level of football has some competitive players, and I think at this point it comes down to what's they need someone to take the mantle at QB, defensive line. They've had some kickers and whatnot, but eventually a QB's got to sneak their way into the UFL and maybe even the NFL. We got Cameron Dukes up at from Lindsey Wilson in the CFL. Who's the next guy?
Do you think there are red flags with someone who transferred from a Boise State to an NAIA school? I mean, I'm sure there's probably a story there and the scouts would know the story. I just wonder if those who might not, me included, do you think there's an issue there?
I think we've accepted the transferring now. Yeah. I think us as a football society, where before you used to be like, oh no, we're not dealing with that, to now we're kind of more accepting of the transferring. That's I think that's kind of, we've just accepted it. We've moved that way.
Yeah.
If we're going to be okay with Cam Ward transferring 3 times, or DJ Ungole transferring 3 times, possibly a 4th because he's got 2 more years of eligibility, why is Andy Peters a red flag?
Yeah, I mean, I just worry about you. You're such a, you play, you're at a high level, and then you go all, I say this and with no disrespect, but you go all the way down to NAIA. I just wonder if there might, if that sets off maybe a radar for somebody, gets on somebody's radar about like, why would he do this? But I mean, there probably a story there. Every player has one.
Yeah, I will challenge this is going to come off. Sometimes kids do not know who they are. Sometimes they have a lot of people telling them things that aren't the best thing, giving them bad advice.
Sure.
And just because a team sends you a tweet or an email or a phone call or a text doesn't mean that you are their guy. And when he went to Boise State, they were in the transition. He's, obviously stayed in Idaho, has some affinity to the state. I could imagine that maybe there's some rose-colored glasses to wanting to play for Boise State, because who did he watch growing up? Probably born in 2002, 2003.
I was going to say, you said he played in 2020, so yeah, right.
Yeah, so it's like he watched Kellen Moore and Joe Southwick, and probably watched highlights of their Oklahoma win. You go there, there's 3 other guys just as good as you. You think you're good. Maybe a college coach transfers, whatever. So that's something I caution with, where, the transfer portal is a little more, a little less oogie boogie to me.
Sure, I 100% agree. How many times have we seen, players when they do leave, no matter if they, it's a lateral transfer or if it's a transfer down or transfer up, they get out of a situation that was not good for them in the first place and then succeed. So you're right. And we're starting to see it now on a much quicker scale, because you don't have to sit out a year when you transfer. And frankly, you can transfer anytime you want now, it seems. So,
well, it's also, point. I think I don't want to say we've maybe not demonized the coaches, but we've not demonized the players, because coaches leave all the time as well. So if I'm the OC, if I'm the quarterbacks coach at Boise State, and I didn't look into this and I should have, and I get the head coach job at the College of Idaho, hey man, you want to come play football? You're my day one.
And start. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
day one starter. You're right.
The last guy that we'll go over with is, another transfer, Joaquin Collazo. I think that because of the success of Bethel, there's a lot of potential here for him to be pretty good. He's improved the last 2 years, has experience at Tusculum, a D2 school in Tennessee. And at Bethel, he's, went from 29, the completion percentage improved 9 points, and they pushed the ball down the field a little bit too. So this isn't like your screen pass 9 points. Goes from 29 touchdowns to 37. Mobility is pretty decent. He's about 200 pounds, 6'3", 6'4", depending on who you talk to and what you look at. They've thrown the ball 350 times plus, and he's a lefty. I don't know. It's just someone I kind of like. When I was digging through this, there was a couple other NAIA guys that I was higher on, but they were underclassmen. And then one gentleman I had was Adrian Parsons, whose QB coach is CJ Collins. By the way, former XFL quarterback. But I felt that Collazo was thicker, and, Parsons, I've seen him in person. I think he's a great quarterback. I think Parsons is possibly going to have the best season in the NAIA because it is his last hurrah, and Mid-America is starting to get some recognition from higher level football, that it's going to be like, this could be our golden guy that we can push right now. So Collazo to me, obviously, it's a little bit slim pickings when you're going into the seniors and whatnot. There's a couple good players out there, but I mean, this is a guy that if he keeps at the 70%, 71% with them still pushing the ball down the field, the team has some good success. I mean, they rode the Brady Cook the Brady Cook thing,
right?
Him being a Memphis quarterback.
Yeah,
Bethel isn't too far away. Granted, he's a Florida kid, but I mean, you couldn't get Jared Guarantano there. Might as well get Joaquin Collazo there.
Right. Yeah. You said if there is a strike against him, that he probably needs to improve his mobility a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really what it really is. But from what I'm understanding, they don't ask him to run a crazy amount either. Yeah. So, I mean, to me, it's kind of just like he didn't really run. He didn't really run in 2020 that much, and then in with college football, the rushing stats are always hard, because right. they account the sacks in there. So when you go to the 800 yards, you probably did gain over 1,000.
Right. Yeah, that's good. You're right.
So, but yeah, he was about like in the mid twos and whatnot. But I mean, to me, I worry about the arm strength from what I've seen of him, but this guy's a gamer. They've played pretty well over the last couple of years. They're always in the playoffs in Bethel. So very curious to see what's going on. I think Bethel did have 2 UFL guys come through. I forget their names, and I know they've sent a guy to the CFL in the last 5 years. So that people are watching.
Yeah, football. I mean, talent's talent. There are a lot of opportunities on every level. I mean, there really are. And the UFL, CFL, and NFL, and IFL, and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of quarterbacks we talked about, man.
We talked about a few.
Yeah,
that's great, man. It's
dude. Yeah, I mean, it's been a lot, but if you made it with us for an hour and 42 minutes, way longer than I thought this would go. Appreciate you jamming on through. I'll be posting these all over. If you haven't, you need to follow John Lewis Sports on Twitter. He's got some of the.
I'm not on Twitter. I am on.
Sorry.
I'm on YouTube.
He's on YouTube. Twitterless John Lewis.
Twitterless.
Yeah, but it's funny. I don't know if you get screenshots of this, but anytime there have been times where I was like, man, if John Lewis, I'd commented. I go, Twitterless John Lewis would love this.
I will. Maybe one day.
Yeah.
But no, yeah. That's kind of how we got to know each other too, was through Twitter and then YouTube and all that. So yeah, it's always fun talking to you, man. Nobody dives into this stuff. I love watching your videos, reading your stuff, because you dive into the personnel of it, and it's great.
Oh yeah, no, it's an untapped talent that I have for sure. But guys, appreciate you guys making it to the end of this video. I'm exhausted. I'm sure John's exhausted. I'm gonna go get some food.
I gotta refuel.
Oh, dude, I'm out. I have 3 bottles of drinks here, and I'm out. I'm like, I messed up. I had my caffeine a little bit too early. But thank you guys once again. Appreciate it. Make sure you check out my channel. John's going to be in the description. Like and subscribe. And remember, if you donate, you're donating to the Luis Perez Hall of Fame Fund.
We're going to make it happen.
Oh, my God, we are. I can't wait. But thank you, guys.